He thought it was just another silent halo jump into frozen wilderness. The forest waited below, cold and endless beneath drifting snow. Then he heard it, not the wind, not the ice, but a low, broken groan trembling through the trees. Following the sound past frostbitten pines, his light revealed a deep, hidden pit. At the bottom lay two Hells Angels bikers, bound and bleeding, shaking from pain and cold. What stopped him wasn't who they were, but how they looked up. Not with anger or threats, but with the stunned realization that someone had found them. In that moment, the mission faded. He didn't see bikers or criminals, only lives balanced on a single choice, one that would change everything that followed. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit subscribe so you never miss another story of courage, redemption, and quiet miracles. February sealed the White Mountain National Forest in a silence as solemn as an oath, the cold pressing down like an unseen hand beneath a sky of drifting white. Jack Carter moved through that silence as if he had been shaped by it. At 36, he carried the body of a man built for endurance rather than display. Broad shoulders held low, strength folded inward, every movement economical. His beard was trimmed close, dark with streaks of premature gray earned not by age but by nights that never truly ended. His face was angular, weathered by wind and war alike, the kind of face that rarely smiled because smiling felt like a promise life had taught him not to make lightly. Jack was a Navy SEAL, and even alone in the forest, that identity clung to him the way frost clung to pine needles. This insertion was meant to be clean, in and out. Track the unauthorized radio relay suspected of coordinating a pipeline for modified weapons and decommissioned military equipment, mark the bull. Coordinates, withdraw without leaving so much as a footprint that mattered. Jack preferred missions like this, quiet ones, where the past stayed buried and the future required no emotional negotiation. Noise led to attachment. Attachment led to mistakes. The forest, however, had other plans. He heard it first as vibration rather than sound, something thin and broken that didn't belong to wind or ice. Jack froze, one gloved hand lifting slightly, as if the air itself might answer him. The sound came again, short, uneven, human, but stripped of dignity. A groan that had learned not to expect help. Jack adjusted his path, boots sinking deeper into snow that had crusted hard enough to crack under weight. He followed the sound downhill, weaving through frostbitten pines whose branches sagged like tired shoulders. The beam of his headlamp cut through the white until it found something wrong, a depression too precise, edges softened with branches laid carefully across the top. Not nature. A trap. He brushed the covering aside and looked down. Two men were bound at the bottom of a deep pit, rope biting into their wrists and torsos, their bodies half buried in churned snow and frozen mud. They wore black leather jackets stiff with ice, the faded winged skull of Hell's Angels barely visible beneath grime. The older one lifted his head first. Mike Razor Maddox was 40 and built like a barroom brawl given human shape. Thick neck, broken nose long since healed crooked, beard patchy and frost-crusted. One cheek was swollen purple, his right shoulder hanging slightly lower than the left, likely dislocated. Despite the pain etched into his posture, his mouth twisted into a crooked grin that suggested defiance was a reflex rather than a choice. His eyes were sharp, blue, dulled by fatigue but not surrender, the eyes of a man who had learned to laugh, at bad odds because fear had never paid his bills. Beside him sat Tyler Ghost Cole, 29, leaner, narrower in soul, the shoulders with a face that still carried traces of boyhood beneath a week's worth of unshaven stubble. His hair, once light brown, was darkened by sweat and snowmelt, plastered to his forehead. Tyler shook visibly, not just from the cold, but from the effort of holding himself together. His eyes kept flicking upward, then away, calculating angles that didn't exist, exits that weren't there. Where Mike projected bravado, Tyler radiated tension, the kind born from knowing more than he wanted to admit. Jack felt the decision settle in his chest before he named it. Protocol said, leave them. They were tied, alive, and likely part of the very network he was tracking. Intervening meant contamination, of the mission, of the evidence, of himself. He had learned, painfully, that saving the wrong person could cost lives later. Mike coughed, the sound wet and raw. Hell of a night for sightseeing, huh? His voice was rough but steady, humor deployed like armor. You a ranger, or are we dead already? Tyler said nothing. He watched Jack with an intensity that bordered on desperation. As if reading the answer in the set of his jaw, Jack knelt at the edge of the pit, snow soaking into his knee. He studied the ropes, the depth, the way the walls were packed hard from repeated movement. This wasn't a random accident. Someone had put effort into making sure these men stayed down there. The thought tightened something behind his ribs. He knew that kind of planning. Images pressed at the edges of his mind. Another place, another climate, another mission that had started clean and ended loud. A choice made too late. A body that hadn't needed to be there. Jack pushed the memory down, the way he always did, but it left behind the familiar ache, the reminder that walking away was also a decision, and not always the righteous one. The forest seemed to lean closer, the wind threading softly through the trees like breath held too long. Jack imagined the place as something ancient and watchful, a god that didn't intervene but never forgot. He met Tyler's eyes, saw fear there, yes, but also something else, calculation edged with regret. Then he looked at Mike, whose grin faltered just enough to reveal the pain underneath. Jack exhaled slowly. He hadn't come here to save anyone, but he also hadn't come here to become the kind of man who stepped over suffering because it was inconvenient. "All right," Jack said, voice low, more to himself than to them. "Nobody moves unless I tell you to." Mike let out a breath that turned into a hoarse laugh. "See, Ghost? I told you miracles still happen." Tyler swallowed hard, snow clinging to his lashes. He didn't smile. He just nodded, as if something inside him had already begun to break. Above them, the sky thickened with falling snow, and the forest closed its circle, patient and silent, as Jack Carter reached for his rope and crossed the first invisible line that would make sure this mission would never stay clean again. Jack dropped the rope into the pit and felt the wind tug at it like a warning. Mike Razor Maddox tilted his head, frost cracking in his beard, and let out a dry laugh that scraped his throat raw. "Friend," he said, voice hoarse but steady, "saving us is where you start making bad life choices." Tyler, Ghost Cole, didn't laugh. He stared up at Jack as if confession were already burning behind his teeth, then clamped his mouth shut, the muscles in his jaw working like he was grinding down fear into something manageable. Jack descended, boots bracing against frozen earth, hands numb but precise. He cut the ropes with a practiced flick, fingers moving without ceremony, because ceremony wasted time and time bled heat. He assessed quickly. Mike's shoulder was out, Tyler's wrists rubbed raw, both men hypothermic but alive. The storm thickened, snow turning the air into a curtain. Jack looped the rope into a harness, pulled them one by one, the lines singing under, strain as if it remembered every weight it had ever borne. Blood seeped into the snow when Mike scraped the rim, black ink against white, and Jack felt the old, unwelcome familiarity of red on missions that were supposed to leave no color behind. Once they were up, Jack worked fast. He splinted Mike's shoulder with a length of carbon rod and tape, cinched tight, set Tyler's wrists, wrapped both men in thermal foil torn from his pack, and tied them together with a short tether. Not custody, survival. Close enough that if one stumbled, the other would pull him back. Whiteout erased the forest's edges. Jack oriented by slope and wind, counting steps like prayers he didn't believe in anymore. Mike tried to keep pace with bravado, teeth chattering as he muttered, "Hell's angels freezing to death in the woods. Hell's gonna roast us for irony." Tyler snorted once despite himself. A small human sound, then coughed hard, the laugh dissolving into pain. Jack noticed it anyway, filed it under signs of life, because morale could be as important as bandages when the cold was trying to take everything. They moved. Snow swallowed tracks almost as soon as they formed. Jack felt the forest watching, patient as a judge who already knew the verdict. Tyler faltered near a stand of pines, eyes darting, breath quickening. Jack steadied him with a grip at the elbow, firm, impersonal. "Someone's coming back," Tyler whispered, barely audible. The words weren't panic, they were calculation. Jack stopped. He knelt, brushed snow aside, and saw it. The clean, parallel grooves of snowmobile treads angling away from the pit, and beside them a long, uneven drag mark, pressed deep, purposeful. This wasn't hunters. This was organization. Mike followed Jack's gaze and his grin finally died. "That's not how accidents look," he said quietly. They pushed on, angling cross-slope to break any pursuit line, Jack doubling back once, then again, stepping onto exposed rock where snow wouldn't hold memory. Tyler breathed through his nose, eyes sharp now, the mask slipping. "We were couriers," he said suddenly. "Protection detail for transfers. I thought it was parts, old stock." Mike swore softly, but didn't deny it. "Then the crates changed," Tyler continued. "Weight changed. Serial plates shaved. I saw a launcher once. I told myself I didn't." Jack listened without interrupting. Confessions made in cold were different. Less about absolution, more about survival. "Who set the trap?" Jack asked. Tyler shook his head. "Didn't see faces. Professionals. Quiet. They didn't want us dead fast." Mike spat red into the snow. "They wanted us gone slow." The wind rose, carrying needles of ice that stung exposed skin. Jack shortened the tether, pulled them closer. He felt the rope in his hand. Nylon. Simple. Honest. A thing that did what it was meant to do. The rope became a boundary between choices. Between the man who could still walk away and the man who had already decided not to. When they reached a shallow cut where the trees thinned, Jack paused again, scanning. The storm smothered sound, but not instinct. He felt it, the sense that something had been planned to account for mercy. Mike met his eyes, seriousness settling in. "We deserve whatever comes," Mike said, "but don't let it come tonight." Tyler nodded, jaw set, fear transmuted into resolve. Jack tightened his gloves and led them on, the rope taut between them. 3 lives moving through the white, not as hunter and hunted, not as savior and sinners, but as bodies resisting the same cold. Behind them, the tracks blurred and vanished, but the truth they'd uncovered pressed closer, dragging its own line through the snow, pointing toward answers that would not stay buried. Jack reached the cabin at the hour when night felt unfinished, the sky still churning snow, as if unwilling to let go. The structure crouched among the trees, a low rectangle of dark timber with a single window glowing amber, smoke bending sideways from a short chimney like a warning flag that had learned to whisper instead of shout. Emily Hayes opened the door before Jack could knock. She was 33, tall and spare in a way that came from work rather than vanity, her posture straight without stiffness. Auburn hair escaped a loose braid at her shoulder, catching the firelight in copper threads. Her skin was pale from winter, freckles scattered lightly across her cheeks and nose, as if snow had once tried to settle there and failed. Her eyes were gray-green, steady and appraising, the eyes of someone who had learned to read damage quickly and decide what could be saved. She took in Jack first, his stance, the way his weight favored readiness. Then the 2 bikers tethered. Together, leather cracked with ice, tattoos dark against reddened skin. "You brought the storm with you," Emily said, voice level, neither welcoming nor refusing. Jack met her gaze. "I brought people who will die if they stay outside." That was enough. Emily stepped back and held the door wide. "Get them in, now." Warmth struck like a physical thing. The cabin smelled of pine resin and boiled water, the iron stove ticking softly as it radiated heat. Emily moved with the efficiency of habit, not haste. She guided Mike to a bench near the stove, eyes flicking once to his shoulder. "Sit, don't argue." Mike opened his mouth, thought better of it, and obeyed, jaw tight. She knelt to Tyler, fingers gentle but sure as she checked his wrists and pulse. Tyler's skin was clammy, eyes bright with exhaustion. Emily worked without asking permission, cutting frozen fabric, cleaning abrasions, setting Mike's shoulder with a practiced pull that drew a sharp hiss from him. "Steel man, huh?" she said dryly as she taped the splint. "Strong enough to fall into holes." Mike managed a crooked grin. "Snow's jealous of me." The corner of Emily's mouth twitched, almost a smile, then vanished as she wrapped him in blankets. "Hold still," she said, and there was kindness in the command. Jack hovered near the door, scanning the window, the way a man does when he has learned that walls can lie. Emily noticed without looking. "You can stand guard later," she said. "Right now I need you to warm water." He did. He followed her directions, tore ration packs into softer pieces, kept the kettle from boiling over. The cabin settled into a rhythm that pushed the storm back a step. Night deepened. Wind clawed at the eaves, then drifted away. Tyler couldn't sleep. He paced the narrow space in short arcs, stopping whenever the stove popped. Emily watched him with clinical calm, then motioned him back to the bench. "Sit," she said, softer. "Now, you're burning heat you don't have." As she changed his bandages, a small metallic clink fell to the floor. Emily froze. Jack's eyes were already there. Tyler looked down, color draining from his face. The object was no trinket, a compact metal key, scuffed, heavy, etched with a crude symbol, a triangle split by a diagonal slash. Emily picked it up between two fingers, turning it so the light caught the engraving. "This isn't yours," she said, not accusing, just stating fact. Tyler swallowed. He looked at Mike. Mike looked away. The stove hissed. Outside, a branch snapped under snow. "Talk," Jack said quietly. Tyler's shoulders sagged, as if he had been holding himself upright with nothing but stubbornness. "We moved cargo," he said. "Protection detail. I told myself it was parts. Old stock." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Then the weight changed. The crates changed. This key opens a storage cage at a drop site. I didn't ask what was inside. I knew." Emily set the key on the table. Her hands were steady, but her jaw tightened. "Weapons," she said. Tyler nodded. "Not drugs." He looked at Jack then, eyes wet but focused. "Weapons." Silence filled the cabin, not empty, but crowded with implications. Emily glanced at Jack, a long look that carried calculation and consent both. She had seen this before, in different forms, the way violence hid behind logistics, the way men told themselves stories until the stories killed someone else. She broke the moment by adding another log to the stove. Flames licked higher, light dancing across faces that had no illusions left. "You're not dying tonight," she said. "None of you." Mike rubbed his beard, shame threading through bravado. "We thought we could keep it small," he muttered. "We were wrong." Emily met his eyes. "Being wrong costs more than being honest," she said. "You're finding out late." Jack moved to the window, listening. The forest lay still, too still, as if holding its breath. He felt the truth settle like a second weight on his shoulders. This wasn't just shelter, it was a crossroads. When Tyler finally slept, head drooping forward, Emily covered him and turned to Jack. "They'll come looking," she said. Jack nodded. "I know." The fire cracked softly, agreeing with them both. As the cabin became more than a refuge, it became the first place the truth had dared to sit down and warm its hands. The fire burned lower as the night settled into the cabin, not dying, just watching. Snow slid softly against the window like fingers testing a lock. Tyler sat hunched on the bench, wrapped in blankets that made him look smaller than his years, the bravado from earlier stripped away by warmth and consequence. When he spoke, his voice carried the brittle edge of ice under pressure. "We weren't the bosses," he said. "We were muscle on wheels, escort runs, keep eyes off the trucks. If trouble showed, we made noise so the cargo didn't." He paused, swallowing. Then something went wrong. A dispute at a transfer point. One guy from the network vanished. No calls, no proof, just gone. Mike leaned forward, elbows on knees, his face carved by firelight into hard planes that had softened since the painkillers kicked in. The dislocated shoulder had robbed him of swagger, but not of clarity. His beard framed a mouth that now struggled to find humor. "When people disappear in our line of work," he said, "it's a message. Someone decided we knew too much. The pit wasn't punishment, it was erasure." He rubbed the biker ring on his finger, the metal worn smooth from years of habit. "I told myself it was old guns, surplus junk. Then I saw the crates, launch tubes, suppressors, optics that cost more than my bike. That's not junk, that's intent." Emily stood at the table, sleeves rolled, her hands around a mug she hadn't sipped. The fire outlined her cheekbones, the freckles across her nose faint constellations. She listened without interrupting, the way medics listen when the truth finally shows up bleeding. Jack watched her face more than the men's. He trusted her read of people. She didn't flinch. She simply set a second mug down, poured hot water, and slid it toward Tyler as if laying out a line of options. Jack waited until the men finished. Then he spoke. "You have two paths. Help expose the network. Routes, storage, faces. Or you leave here when the storm lifts and you carry what comes next alone." His tone was even, not threatening, not pleading. No third option. The cabin ticked and breathed. Wind pushed snow against the door. Tyler stared into the mug as steam fogged his glasses, then nodded. "I'll talk," he said. "Everything. Drop sites, call signs, schedules. I kept notes in my head because paper gets found." His shoulders sagged with relief that surprised him. Mike didn't answer. He reached up slowly, fingers stiff, and twisted the biker ring from his finger. The metal clinked softly as he placed it on the table beside the mug, the sound too small for what it meant. "I'm tired," he said at last, voice rough. "Tired of lying to myself. I'll help. Just don't dress it up like redemption. Call it what it is. Emily's eyes softened, not with pity, but recognition. Call it a start, she said. Jack felt the weight shift. He knew this moment, the quiet hinge where lives turned without ceremony. He stepped to the window, scanned the tree line. The forest lay still, but stillness had learned to lie. He thought of the tracks they'd erased, the ones they hadn't. He thought of how mercy often left footprints the cold couldn't hide. They worked through the hours. Tyler sketched roots in charcoal on scrap wood, naming a storage cage keyed by the triangle-slashed symbol, describing a logging spur that hadn't logged anything in years. Mike filled gaps with street sense. Who talked, who didn't, how money moved when fear entered the room. Emily listened, asked precise questions, the kind that made men realize they'd been sloppy. She fetched maps, old ranger charts, laid them flat, and weighted the corners with tools. Outside, a shadow passed the window. A raccoon nosing at snowmelt near the eaves, its striped tail twitching. An ordinary creature surviving winter by habit. Emily smiled briefly at it, then sobered. They'll come, she said. People who build pits don't stop at one. Jack nodded. He felt the cabin become something else, a thin redoubt in a white sea. He set quiet measures, checked lines of sight, moved reflective metal to break light, hung empty cans on cord near the door to whisper alarms. Emily watched, learning his rhythms, then added her own. Extra blankets by the exit, a thermos staged, boots aligned. When dawn threatened, but didn't arrive, Tyler slumped asleep at last. Mike stayed awake, staring at the ring as if it might speak. Emily placed a hand briefly on his forearm, warm and firm. You don't have to be who you were tonight, she said. Mike exhaled. Just tonight, he agreed. Jack took first watch. Snow fell like feathers from an old war god, each flake a reminder that nothing was ever truly buried. Beneath the quiet, the truth lay awake, waiting for morning, and for the reckoning it would bring. The storm returned with intent. It didn't announce itself, it gathered. Wind pressed low through the trees, snow lifting and falling in sheets that blurred distance and sound, until the world felt reduced to breath and heartbeat. Jack felt it before he heard it, the subtle pressure change, the way the forest went watchful. He finished the last knot on a trip line and stepped back, the cabin now a lattice of quiet measures, corded cans by the door, reflective scraps near windows to fracture light, a narrow lane cleared for a clean exit. Emily moved with him, not shadowing but anticipating. She wore a wool sweater over thermal layers, sleeves pushed up, auburn hair re-braided tight to keep it from her eyes. Her hands were steady, her voice low, the calm of someone who had learned that panic was a luxury winter didn't afford. She staged a med kit near the stove, boots aligned by the back door, thermos sealed. If it goes loud, she said, I keep them breathing. You keep them alive. Mike and Tyler stood near the door, tether gone, choices made. Mike's leather jacket was off now, replaced by borrowed layers that made him look older, broader in the shoulders, but less armored. His beard hid a split lip, his eyes were clear. Tyler wore a knit cap pulled low, face pale, jaw set, the jitter replaced by focus. They listened when Jack spoke, nodded once, twice. No jokes, no questions. The sound came first as a hum, thin and mechanical, slicing through the wind. A drone. Jack killed the lantern and the cabin fell into a darker amber, firelight only. Outside, the hum multiplied. Snowmobiles followed, engines throttled low, then closer, closer, until the trees glowed with cut beams. Positions, Jack whispered. Emily retreated to the stove side, Mike and Tyler to the door. It wasn't bravado that put them there. It was arithmetic. Time bought here meant distance gained later. A knock hit the door, firm, practiced. Mike glanced back once, a crooked grin, returning like an old habit. Told you, he murmured, then squared his shoulders. Tyler swallowed out and nodded. Fear pressed into resolve. The door burst inward. Cold slammed the room. Figures moved in layered winter gear, faces masked, lenses gleaming with thermal glow. Mike took the first blow to the shoulder and grunted, teeth bared. See, he said through pain, the joke brittle but alive. Snow's jealous. Tyler stepped in front of Emily without being told, arms wide, a human shield buying seconds that felt like hours. Jack moved. He didn't fire, he displaced. He drew attention, shattered angles, pulled pursuit lines into the corded cans that whispered alarms. A round tore wood inches from where he had been. Splinters burned his arm, and he ignored it. The The drone dipped, recalibrated, then veered as wind caught it wrong. Emily worked as the chaos pressed close. She hauled Mike back when his leg buckled, hands red but sure, voice anchoring. "Stay with me. Breathe." She kept Tyler low, eyes on the door, heart steadying his. The night broke open with rotors, deep, unmistakable. Light knifed down through snow. A voice boomed, amplified and unyielding. "Drop your weapons. Now!" Confusion rippled outside. Engines revved and died. Shapes scattered. Jack saw the moment and took it, forcing retreat lines into the open. Boots hit snow behind him. Professionals moving with purpose. Black silhouettes descending with ropes and discipline. The storm swallowed shouts. Then there were cuffs, shoves, silence returning in pieces. When it ended, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the forest exhaled. Mike sat on the floor, back against the stove, breathing hard. Tyler crouched nearby, shaking now that he was allowed to. Emily checked them both, hands gentle, eyes fierce. Jack stood by the window, chest rising and falling, as the weight finally found him. Morning came thin and cold. The cabin smelled of smoke and antiseptic. Outside, tracks led away, in clean lines, evidence instead of threat. Tyler sat at the table with a mug, speaking quietly into a recorder, choosing accuracy over excuses. He agreed to full cooperation, understanding the cost and accepting it. Mike listened, ringless hand resting on his knee. When it was over, he pulled the Hells Angels patch from his jacket and set it on the table. He didn't look at it again. He left at noon, walking into the trees without ceremony, like a man returning a blade to a sheath he no longer needed. Jack stayed. He helped Emily reinforce the cabin, map safer routes, turn a refuge into a winter outpost. It wasn't a penance, it was a decision. The forest watched, ancient and exacting, offering no forgiveness it didn't make you earn. Snow fell softly, and for once the quiet felt earned too. That night in the storm, there was no thunder to announce a miracle, no flash of light to demand belief. The miracle arrived quietly, in a rope lowered at the right moment, in a door opened during the coldest hour, in the choice to stay when walking away would have been easier. Some call that chance. Some call it kindness. Many of us recognize it as God's hand, moving gently through ordinary people. Life works the same way. Miracles rarely appear loud or dramatic. They show up when we choose honesty over silence, compassion over comfort, presence over escape. God does not always speak in the roar of the storm. Sometimes he whispers through conscience, through mercy, through a single moment where doing the right thing costs something, and we choose it anyway. If this story touched you, let it be a reminder that you are never alone, even in your coldest seasons. Carry a little of this warmth with you today. Share this story with someone who may need hope. Leave a comment with a moment when you chose kindness, and subscribe to the channel to walk with us through more stories of healing, courage, and grace. May God bless you and those you love. May he guard your heart, steady your steps, and light your way when the path feels uncertain. May peace rest over your home, strength fill your choices, and may you never forget that even the smallest act of love can become a miracle in God's hands.